All right, Exodus 5, let's call this one Who. Why? Because Pharaoh in verse 2 is literally going to ask Moses, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord. And it's going to implicate a question that Jesus is going to raise toward the end of his ministry. And it's the issue of lawlessness. And he's going to say, as we have mentioned in the past, that as lawlessness increases, the hearts of people will grow cold because they simply can't rely on any objective standards to guard their lives, their homes, their property, their safety, or whatever. And so that's the position that Israel is in now. So when Pharaoh is asking this question, who is the Lord? He's really asking, who is the Lord that I should change my position of lordship over this nation and over this people to treat them however I want? And that's essentially what lawlessness is. It's distinguished from anarchy because anarchy is just everybody creating their own law. See, in lawlessness, at least biblically, we'll see it as an order that is established by one who sits above the law to do whatever he wants to everybody else beneath him. And that's a picture that we get of Pharaoh here, extending from his insecurities, not from his sense of strength and superiority. Back in chapter 1, he thought that Israel was too numerous and too mighty for his people as Israel began to grow stronger and stronger. Now he is going to show us how lawlessness can manifest itself in some practical ways that actually you'll see over and over again in different types of government that descend into lawless ways. First of all, he is going to start off with continuing the retaliation that really sets off the book of Exodus in verse 5. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. The same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. Thus the famous bricks without straw. And he is essentially retaliating against the people asking for some time off. So the first 4 chapters or so, he's already increased their labor. They're struggling under it. They're asking for a break. And his response to their request for a break is heartless. And so many times in situations where you even put yourself, you didn't have to be a king, in a position of authority where you feel insecure, as we've seen in chapters past, it can tempt you to overreact if you do not have good self-awareness and good self-control. And that's what we're seeing in Pharaoh. It's going to get worse because he's going to compound his retaliation with spin. In verse 8, it's going to read, but the number of bricks that they made in the past, you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. They're not idle. They're asking for time off because they're struggling under the requirements that have been imposed on them, increasingly worsening as they get stronger and stronger, because that's what God has done. He's blessed them more and more as they have been more and more oppressed. And so Pharaoh, threatened by that, is increasing their workload more, and then he's spinning the truth to justify why he's being more and more cruel. It's not going to stop there. He's going to enforce all these standards with physical abuse. Verse 14, and the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday as in the past? Well, obviously, it's because you're making it more and more difficult for them to get their work done. It's going to be difficult for them to complete their normal workload under abnormal constraints. And so they're struggling, but they have no redress in the courts, and injustice is going to be another factor we'll see in verse 15. Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, but there's going to be no relief. Why? Because he's setting ridiculous standards. Verse 16, no straw is being given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks, and behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is with your own people, who are depriving them the equipment they need to perform the tasks put on them. And so ultimately what we can see in this chapter is a situation where it's not just rulers, but each and every one of us are put in the position of asking, who is God? Because there is something that we have to give up in order to serve his authority. And it can be easy to criticize his laws when we fail to take into account how it's really working out for us, being our own authority over what's right and what's wrong. See, in this story, Pharaoh is making himself more and more miserable as the people are becoming more and more miserable. And in our lives, it's often the same thing. It's easy to be tempted to criticize God and his laws, but lose track of the ways in which we make our own environment more miserable by trying to control either the people around us or actually even replace God as the authority of what's right and wrong.